The idea started with a woman Keanu didn't know. He was at a charity gala in Beverly Hills, the kind where everyone wore clothes that cost more than a used car and pretended the champagne wasn't going to their heads. He'd been cornered at a table with donors and executives, nodding politely through conversations about real estate portfolios and wine collections, when a woman across the table started telling a story. She'd gone to a high-end restaurant for her anniversary. Dressed nicely, she thought, but not extravagantly. Flats instead of heels. A dress from a department store, not a boutique. The hostess had looked her up and down and said they were fully booked. She could see empty tables behind the velvet rope. Everyone at the gala table laughed. She laughed too. But Keanu noticed that her hands were gripping her wine glass a little too tight, and her laugh ended a half-second too soon. That night, lying in bed, he couldn't stop thinking about it. Not about her specifically, but about something larger, the invisible sorting machine that existed in places like that restaurant. Places like his hotel, the Meridian Grand Hotel. He'd invested in it almost 4 years ago, poured millions into turning it into one of the finest establishments on the West Coast. He'd hired a management team, reviewed quarterly reports with his assistant Marcus Chen, attended the occasional board meeting. Every time he walked through those doors, people fell over themselves to greet him. The champagne appeared. The suite was immaculate. Everyone smiled. But what happened when no one important was watching? He needed to find out. The next afternoon, Keanu stood in front of his bathroom mirror wearing faded jeans, the ones he used when working on his motorcycles, spotted with grease stains he'd never bothered to wash out. A gray t-shirt, slightly wrinkled from sitting in a drawer. Worn sneakers that had seen better days. He pulled a baseball cap low over his forehead and studied his reflection. He looked like a guy who might fix your plumbing. Like someone who'd wander into the wrong building by accident. Perfect. He parked his truck 3 blocks from the hotel and walked the rest of the way. The evening sun was dying behind the skyline, painting the glass facade of the Meridian Grand in shades of gold and copper. Through the massive revolving doors, he could see the lobby, crystal chandeliers, Italian marble, flower arrangements that probably had their own line item in the budget. His money, his dream. He took a breath and pushed through the doors. The lobby smelled like vanilla and something expensive he couldn't name. His sneakers squeaked faintly on the polished floor. A young man stood behind the front desk, late 20s, uniform pressed sharp enough to cut paper. His name tag read Victor. "Good evening," Keanu said with a warm smile. "I was wondering if you might have any rooms available tonight." Victor's eyes began at Keanu's sneakers. They traveled up slowly. Faded denim, wrinkled cotton, baseball cap, like a scanner cataloging every deficiency. By the time his gaze reached Keanu's face, his expression had already changed. Not anger, not concern, something worse. Dismissal. "I'm sorry," Victor said, in a voice polished smooth by practice. "But this hotel isn't really suited for someone like you." The words landed like a slap delivered with a velvet glove. Keanu was certain he'd misheard. "Excuse me?" Victor sighed, the kind of sigh you'd give a child asking why the sky is blue for the 4th time. "The Meridian Grand is a luxury establishment, sir. We cater to a certain caliber of clientele. Perhaps you'd be more comfortable at one of the budget hotels a few blocks down." Keanu stood very still. He had buried people he loved. He had sat in hospital rooms and held hands that were growing cold. He had weathered the kind of grief that reshapes a person's bones. But this particular species of casual cruelty, delivered with a customer service smile, was something new. "And what makes you think I can't afford to stay here?" he asked, keeping his voice level. Victor leaned forward slightly, the way someone does when they're about to share an obvious truth. "Sir, I've been doing this job for 3 years. I can spot who belongs here and who doesn't." A thin smile. "Trust me, you don't belong here. Now, I'm going to have to ask you to leave before you make our actual guests uncomfortable." Keanu's fingers twitched at his side. One phone call. That's all it would take. One flash of his ID and this young man's world would collapse in real time. He could feel the impulse rising in his chest like heat. But then a different thought surfaced, quiet and stubborn. How many people has he done this to who don't own the building? I'd like to speak with a manager, Keanu said. Victor rolled his eyes. Actually rolled them like a teenager being asked to clean his room. That won't be necessary. The manager will tell you the same thing. We have standards here. He paused, letting the word land. Please don't make me call security. Keanu didn't leave. He walked toward the hotel restaurant instead, visible just off the main lobby through an archway framed in dark wood. A young woman stood at the hostess stand, her name tag reading Amanda. Behind her, at least 6 tables sat empty, their white tablecloths glowing under soft pendant lights. Good evening, Keanu said. I was hoping to get a table for dinner. Amanda's eyes made the same journey Victor's had. Shoes, jeans, shirt.
Capítulo.
The verdict came faster this time. She'd clearly had practice. Do you have a reservation, sir? I don't. But I can see you have several tables available. She didn't even glance behind her. Those are reserved for guests arriving later. I'm afraid we can't accommodate walk-ins this evening. Keanu pointed toward a table by the window, clearly empty. No place setting suggesting anyone was expected. What about that one? As I said, sir, all of our tables are spoken for. She smiled, the kind of smile that isn't one. Perhaps the food court at the shopping center down the street might suit you better. The food court. He was standing in the restaurant of a hotel he owned, and this woman was sending him to a mall. Is it my clothes that bother you? He asked quietly. Or is there something else about how I look that tells you I don't deserve to eat here? Amanda's cheeks colored, but her posture didn't bend an inch. The Meridian Grand has a certain atmosphere we strive to maintain. Our regular guests expect a certain environment. I'm sure you understand. He understood perfectly, and understanding made it worse. Before he could respond, footsteps behind him. He turned to find Victor approaching with 2 security guards. Big men in dark suits, hands clasped, faces carefully blank. Sir, Victor said, loudly enough for the entire lobby to hear. I thought I made it clear that you needed to leave. Heads turned. A well-dressed couple near the elevators took a quick step away from Keanu, as if whatever he had might be contagious. A family with young children. The mother pulled her kids closer and steered them toward the elevator, shielding them. From him. From a man whose only crime was wearing the wrong clothes. The security guard stepped forward. Sir, we've received complaints about your behavior. You're making guests uncomfortable. We need you to leave. Complaints from whom? Keanu asked. I haven't spoken to anyone except your staff, and I've been completely polite. This is private property, Victor said, crossing his arms with the satisfaction of someone playing a winning hand. We have the right to refuse service to anyone. You can walk out, or these gentlemen can help you. Keanu looked at the security guards, at Victor, at Amanda, at the guests watching from their safe distances. Some curious, most relieved that the situation was being handled. Not one of them questioned whether this was right. Not one. All right, he said. I'll leave. A wise decision, sir. Keanu walked across the marble floor, his sneakers squeaking softly with each step. The security guards followed. The glass doors swung shut behind him, and the cool night air hit his face like cold water. He stood on the sidewalk for a long time. The hotel's facade glowed above him, beautiful, elegant, immaculate. A gorgeous mask. He pulled out his phone. Marcus, we have a serious problem. He barely slept. The next morning, he was in his Santa Monica office before 8. A small room with a desk, comfortable chairs, and walls lined with books instead of awards. Marcus Chun was already there, 2 coffees waiting, concern written across his face. Keanu told him everything. When he finished, Marcus leaned back and exhaled slowly through his teeth. In your own hotel, the place you built. It wasn't just rudeness, Keanu said. It was practiced, automatic, like they'd done it 100 times before. Marcus was quiet for a moment. You want to go back? Under a different name. John Mitchell. Book me a standard room, 2 nights. Prepaid card, no paper trail. I need to know if this is two bad employees or something bigger. And your appearance? They might recognize you from last night. I'll clean up. Blazer, slacks. Nothing flashy, just enough to pass the dress code. I want to see if the treatment changes with the clothes, or if there's something else driving this. Marcus was already typing. I'll have it ready by tonight. That evening, Keanu walked through the Meridian Grand's revolving doors for the second time in 24 hours. Button-down shirt, dark slacks, polished shoes, simple blazer. Trimmed beard, hair combed back. He looked like a mid-level executive on a business trip. Forgettable. A different clerk this time. Catherine, 30s, professional smile that reached her eyes. Welcome to the Meridian Grand, Mr. Mitchell. You're with us for 2 nights? Wonderful. She processed his documents efficiently, handed over a key card, gave clear directions to the elevators. Pleasant. Genuine. The interaction a hotel check-in should be. Walking to the elevator, Keanu felt a flicker of doubt. Maybe last night was an anomaly. Maybe Victor and Amanda were just 2 bad hires in an otherwise decent operation. Room 412 was clean, comfortable, tastefully decorated. Standard, not luxury, a queen bed, a small desk, a window overlooking downtown. Exactly what a regular guest would experience. After an hour, he ordered room service. Grilled chicken sandwich, side salad. The man who delivered it was in his 40s, name tag reading Gerald. He wheeled the cart in without greeting, set up the tray with mechanical precision, his face blank as drywall. Every movement said, I am doing this because I have to. Everything all right? Keanu tried. Everything's fine, sir. Gerald's eyes flicked to Keanu's face for half a second, and in that half second, Keanu caught it. The assessment, the judgment, a quick calculation of worth, filed and dismissed. Keanu held out a generous tip. Gerald took it without eye contact, said, thank you, without meaning it, and left. Keanu stood in the doorway, watching him disappear down the hall. 2 encounters in 2 days. Different employees, same undercurrent. This wasn't random. This was culture. He ate in silence, turning possibilities over in his mind. Then, around 11, just as he was getting ready for bed, a knock at his door. Not a polite knock. A cob knock. Hard. Insistent. He opened it. 2 security guards. One of them, the same guy from last night. The man's eyes flickered with the faintest recognition, but he said nothing about it. Mr. Mitchell? We've received a complaint about your presence. You need to come with us. A complaint? I've been in my room for 3 hours. I ordered a sandwich. That's it. I'm not at liberty to discuss details, sir, but we need you to vacate. I'm a registered guest. I paid for this room. Sir, please don't make this difficult. The anger came up fast this time, hot and sharp, but Keanu held it. Get me the manager. Now. Radio static. Murmured conversation. Then a man appeared at the end of the hallway. Late 40s, tailored suit, graying hair, a face that looked like it hadn't relaxed since 2019. Name tag, Daniel Foster, General Manager. Daniel tried the usual script. Vague complaints, guest comfort, a refund for the inconvenience. Perhaps another hotel might be more suitable. Keanu let him finish. Then he pulled out his real driver's license and held it up. My name is Keanu Reeves. I own this hotel. Daniel's face went through something like the 5 stages of grief in about 4 seconds. Confusion, disbelief, recognition, panic, and finally a kind of nauseated terror. Mr. Reeves, if I had known. That's exactly the point, Daniel. You shouldn't need to know. The next morning, executive conference room, mahogany table, leather chairs, city skyline through the windows. Daniel had brought boxes, employee files, guest complaints, service logs, 2 years' worth. His hands shook slightly as he spread them across the table. Marcus arrived with his own ammunition. He'd spent the night scraping guest reviews from every platform he could find. Travel sites, social media, forums, comment sections, and cross-referencing them with dates, room assignments, and whatever demographic information was available. There's a clear pattern, Marcus said, turning his laptop so Keanu and Daniel could see the graphs. Guests who fit a certain profile consistently get worse treatment. Longer wait times, inferior room assignments despite availability, unresponsive staff, unexplained surcharges, and the complaints cluster around specific employees and specific time periods. This isn't a few bad apples, Keanu. This is designed. Daniel stared at the screen, pale as paper. I noticed things over the years, small incidents, comments that felt off. But every time I started asking questions, I was told to stay in my lane. By whom? Keanu asked. Richard Harrison, head of guest relations. He's been here almost 8 years. He has a lot of influence. Marcus slid a stack of financial printouts across the table. It gets worse. Payments to vendors that don't exist. Service fees for services never performed. Refunds logged but never actually paid out. Small amounts spread across hundreds of transactions, but the total is significant. Embezzlement, Keanu said. Marcus nodded. And the irregularities started about 2 years ago, right when Harrison took over more financial oversight. Keanu stood and walked to the window. His reflection stared back at him, superimposed over the city. Somewhere below, people were going to work, getting coffee, living their lives. None of them knew that inside this beautiful building, something rotten had been growing for years. I need someone on the inside, he said. Someone who hasn't been turned. Daniel thought for a moment.
Elena Rodriguez.
Housekeeping. 6 years. She sees everything in this hotel, and she's never played along with any of it. The break room was exactly what you'd expect from a space designed to be functional and nothing more. Fluorescent lights with a faint buzz. Vending machines. Plastic chairs. The kind of room where the glamour of the Meridian Grand didn't bother to reach. Elena Rodriguez sat across from Keanu, a woman in her early 40s with hands that told the story of her work. Dry, strong, worn smooth in places. She held her coffee cup with both hands, like it was keeping her anchored. Mr. Foster said I could trust you, she said. Her voice was steady but careful. He said you're trying to fix things. I am, but I can't fix what I don't understand. Tell me what's really been happening here. Elena took a breath and then she talked. She told him how it started, slowly, like a temperature rising so gradually you don't notice until you're burning. Harrison's private meetings with supervisors. The instructions that filtered down. Don't spend too much time on that room. Don't waste the good linens. Don't be too friendly. Never written down. Never explicit enough to quote. Just a pressure, constant and suffocating, that reshaped behavior over time. What happened to people who pushed back? Keanu asked. Bad shifts. The worst assignments. And if they kept pushing? Elena set down her coffee. They just weren't here anymore. Transferred. Let go. Always a reason on paper, performance issues, restructuring. But everyone knew the real reason. And you? I clean every room the same way. I treat every guest the same way. She said it simply, without pride. Just fact. My mother taught me that you don't get to decide who deserves respect. Keanu nodded. Did anyone else resist? A few. Mostly in housekeeping and kitchen staff. People Harrison didn't pay much attention to because he didn't think we mattered enough to control. A ghost of a smile. That was his mistake. Then her voice dropped. She glanced at the door. There's something else. Harrison doesn't work alone. I've seen him meeting with someone. A man who doesn't work here. Late at night. Harrison's office, sometimes the parking garage. Expensive suits. Harrison treats him like a superior. Like someone he reports to. Keanu leaned forward. What does he look like? Older. Late 50s, maybe 60. Gray hair. Very polished. Drives a black Mercedes. She paused, reaching into memory. I saw the license plate once. Personalized. It said something like Caldwell. Marcus, who'd been taking quiet notes in the corner, looked up sharply. He pulled up a photo on his laptop and turned the screen toward Elena. Is this him? She studied the face, nodded slowly. That's him. Who is he? Keanu's voice was heavy when he answered. Richard Caldwell. He sits on our board of directors. The break room felt smaller suddenly. Elena's eyes went wide with fear she couldn't hide. If he finds out I talked to you, nothing will happen to you, Keanu said. I give you my word. The text came at 4 in the afternoon. Daniel Foster found something about Harrison and Caldwell. They know I've been helping you.
I'm scared.
Meet me parking garage 9 tonight. Come alone. Marcus read it and shook his head. This stinks. Maybe. But if Daniel actually found something, we can't ignore it. Then I'm coming. You'll wait in a car on the street level. Close enough to help, far enough to stay invisible. And call the police the moment I go in. Marcus didn't like it. His jaw worked silently for a moment. But he'd known Keanu long enough to recognize when arguing was pointless. Fine. But if you're not out in 15 minutes, I'm coming in whether you like it or not. The parking garage at 9 o'clock was a place designed to make you uneasy. Concrete pillars casting long shadows. Fluorescent tubes flickering like something out of a horror film. The air tasted like exhaust and cold stone. Every sound, every footstep, every distant car engine bounced off the walls and came back distorted. Keanu walked slowly, his phone in his pocket, voice recorder running. Daniel! His voice echoed and died. Silence. Then a door creaked somewhere deeper in the garage. Mr. Reeves. Over here. Daniel stood near the service elevator, half lit by a dying fluorescent tube. His face was the color of old paper. His eyes wouldn't stay still. Keanu started toward him. What did you find? The heavy door behind Daniel swung open before he could answer. 2 men stepped out. Richard Harrison, mid-40s, sharp suit, the kind of face that could charm a room or cut someone down without changing expression. His eyes were cold and steady. Behind him, taller, silver-haired, wearing a suit that cost more than most people's monthly mortgage. Richard Caldwell. He moved with the unhurried confidence of a man who had spent decades being the most powerful person in every room he entered. Good evening, Mr. Reeves, Caldwell said. His voice was warm, the warmth of a snake on a sun-heated rock. So glad you could join us. Keanu looked at Daniel. Daniel wouldn't meet his eyes. They knew, Daniel whispered. They said they'd destroy me, my career, my family. I didn't. There's always a choice, Daniel. You just made the wrong one. Caldwell stepped forward, hands in his pockets, relaxed as a man at a cocktail party. Don't be too hard on him. Daniel understands something you apparently don't, how the world actually works. Harrison moved casually to block the exit path back to the main garage. Not aggressive, just present. Keanu was boxed in, concrete walls on 3 sides, Harrison behind him, Caldwell in front. Let me tell you what happens now, Caldwell said, all pretense of warmth evaporating. You drop this investigation. You tell your assistant and anyone else involved that it was a misunderstanding. And you let us continue operating this hotel the way it should be operated. The way it should be operated, Keanu repeated. Meaning the way you've been operating it. Stealing from the books. Treating guests like they're worth less because of what they're wearing. Curating a clientele, Caldwell corrected, as if the distinction were obvious. The guests who matter, the ones with real wealth, real status, they pay premium rates because they know they'll be surrounded by the right people. We've increased revenue significantly. At what cost? At no cost that matters. Keanu stared at him. How many people walked out of this hotel feeling worthless? How many carried that home with them? Caldwell shrugged, a small, precise movement. I've been in this business for 35 years. I was running hotels when you were doing bit parts on television. This is how luxury hospitality works. Always has been. Not here. Not anymore. Caldwell's expression didn't change, but something behind his eyes hardened. If you don't walk away from this, we will make your life very difficult. We have media contacts, We can create stories, manufacture scandals. Your other business interests. We can complicate those too. He paused. You're not the only one with power, Mr. Reeves. The difference is we're not afraid to use ours. The garage was quiet. Water dripped somewhere in the darkness. Keanu could hear his own breathing. Then he reached into his pocket. You know what's interesting? He said. You built this whole operation on secrecy, on making sure no one with authority ever saw what was really happening. He pulled out his phone and held it up. But you forgot the most basic rule. Always assume someone is recording. The color drained from Caldwell's face like water down a sink. Every word, Keanu continued, every threat, every admission, already sent to my assistant. He has instructions to forward it to the police if I don't check in within 10 minutes. You're bluffing, Caldwell said, but his voice had cracked, just slightly, at the edge. Try me. Harrison took a step back, then another. His calculated composure was dissolving, and underneath it was just a man realizing the ground beneath him had vanished. Headlights swept across the concrete walls. The sound of engines, multiple engines, echoed through the garage. 3 police cars rolled in from the street level, lights flashing, sirens off. Officers emerged quickly, fanning out, surrounding the group. Marcus appeared behind the police line, phone in hand. He'd made the call the moment Keanu walked into the garage. Exactly as planned. Richard Caldwell, Richard Harrison. You're under arrest for fraud, embezzlement, and conspiracy. Harrison started protesting immediately, his voice climbing toward something shrill. This is a setup. We haven't done anything. But Caldwell was silent. He stood perfectly still as the officers approached. His eyes locked on Keanu with a fury that seemed to generate its own heat. As the handcuffs clicked shut, he finally spoke. You think this changes anything? People like me built this world. You just play pretend in movies. Keanu stepped closer, close enough that only Caldwell could hear. You had everything, Richard. Success, influence, the ability to make a real difference. And you used it to make people feel small. He paused. That's the part you'll have to live with. Something flickered behind Caldwell's eyes. Not remorse, but recognition, the kind that comes when you realize someone has seen you clearly, and what they've seen is small. The officers led them away. Daniel Foster was taken separately for questioning, his face a mask of shame. Marcus walked up to Keanu as the garage emptied. You okay? Keanu watched the taillights of the police cars disappear up the ramp. Yeah, it's over. But they both knew that wasn't quite true. The trial was faster than anyone expected. The recording from the parking garage was devastating. Caldwell and Harrison's own voices admitting to everything. Combined with the financial records, Elena's testimony, the documented pattern across years of guest reviews, the prosecution barely had to try. Harrison got 8 years. Federal prison, embezzlement, fraud, civil rights violations. He was led out of the courtroom looking stunned, like a man who had always believed he was untouchable and was only now discovering otherwise. Caldwell fell harder, stripped of every board seat, not just the Meridian Grand, but 3 other companies. Nearly $2 million in restitution. A 10-year ban from the hospitality industry. On sentencing day, his silver hair was unkempt, his expensive suit wrinkled. He shuffled past Keanu's row without making eye contact. Keanu watched him go. He felt no satisfaction, just a heaviness, a waste. Then came the real work. Catching criminals was the easy part. Rebuilding a culture that had been poisoned for years, that was something else entirely. Daniel Foster was the first hard decision. He'd betrayed Keanu in that garage, lured him into what could have been a genuine ambush. But he'd also been the one to hand over the financial records that cracked the case. He'd testified against Harrison and Caldwell when silence would have been the safer bet. Keanu sat across from him in his office. Daniel looked like he'd aged 5 years in 2 weeks. What you did in that garage was wrong. You know that. I know. Daniel's voice was stripped bare. I was a coward. I told myself I was protecting my family, but the truth is I was just scared. Keanu studied him for a long moment. You also brought me those records. You testified when it counted. Daniel looked up, something fragile in his expression. You stay on, Keanu said. Reduced responsibilities. You work directly with me and the new guest relations director to rebuild this place from the ground up. But I need you to hear this clearly. There is no second chance. Do you understand? Daniel swallowed, nodded, blinked hard. The new director of guest relations was obvious. Keanu found Elena in the break room, same table, same coffee cup. Mr. Reeves, I'm a housekeeper. I don't have a degree. I don't have management experience. Elena, I've met plenty of people with degrees and management experience. Some of them are currently in federal prison. He leaned forward. What you have, the thing that made you treat every guest with respect when you were being pressured not to, that doesn't come from a classroom. I'm offering you the position. Full training, full support, full authority to reshape how this hotel treats people. Elena was quiet for a long time. Her fingers traced the rim of her coffee cup. My mother used to tell me that kindness wouldn't make me rich or powerful, she said softly, but it would let me sleep at night. She paused. She never got to see me become anything more than a housekeeper. She looked up. One tear, just one, rolled down her cheek. She would have been so proud. 3 days later, grand ballroom, 200 employees, executives, concierges, housekeepers, kitchen staff, valets, sitting in rows facing a small stage. Keanu kept it short. He told them what had happened, not with slogans, not with speeches, but with facts. He told them the system Harrison and Caldwell had built was gone. He told them Elena Rodriguez, who had cleaned rooms in this hotel for 6 years without ever betraying who she was, would be leading guest relations. I'm not going to stand here and tell you what to believe, he said. But every person who walks through those doors gets treated the same. That's not a suggestion. That's the job. If you can do that, I want you here. If you can't, I understand. But this isn't the place for you. He introduced new systems. Anonymous feedback for guests and staff, regular service reviews that measured how people felt, not just how fast they were served, and a direct line to him for anyone who needed it. He didn't linger on the stage, didn't wait for applause, just said, let's get to work, and stepped down. The applause came anyway, not from everyone, but from enough. The transformation didn't happen overnight. Some employees couldn't adapt. Some didn't want to. There were setbacks, hard conversations, moments where the old culture pushed back like a weed with deep roots. But week by week, something shifted. Guest reviews began to change. Stories appeared on travel forums, not about the marble or the chandeliers, but about how it felt to walk through the doors. Word spread through communities that had long felt unwelcome in places like this. The Meridian Grand is different now. 6 months after the arrests, Keanu stood in the lobby on a quiet evening. Simple clothes.
No entourage. No fanfare.
Staff passed by and nodded or smiled. Not the rigid, frozen smiles of people performing for a boss, but the easy kind that comes from a workplace where fear isn't the operating system anymore. Elena walked up with a tablet showing the latest guest satisfaction numbers, the highest in the hotel's history. We did it, she said. Keanu watched a family come through the front doors. A couple with 2 young kids, simply dressed, the children's eyes going wide at the chandeliers. A bellhop moved immediately to help with their bags. A concierge walked over to greet them personally, the same warmth she'd shown the tech CEO who'd checked in an hour earlier. No, Keanu said. You did it. They stood watching the lobby fill. People who looked nothing alike, all being treated exactly the same. Mr. Reeves, Elena said after a while. That first night, when they threw you out, you could have ended everything right there. Why didn't you? He thought about it. Because firing 2 people would have just cut the top off the weed. The roots would still be there, and something would grow back. I had to feel what our guests were feeling to understand how deep it went. He paused. And I had to find the people who'd kept doing the right thing when nobody was watching. People like you.
Elena nodded slowly.
My mother used to say that kindness is like a mirror. How you treat others shows who you really are. Smart woman. She was.
Elena smiled.
She would have liked you. Keanu laughed quietly. Outside, the city hummed. Inside, a hotel that had once quietly sorted human beings into categories of worthy and unworthy was just a hotel. A place where you walked in and someone was glad to see you. Nothing revolutionary about that. Nothing that should require a federal investigation and 2 arrests and a housekeeper promoted to director. But it had. And maybe that was the point. Not that things were fixed, but that someone had bothered to look. Keanu headed for the door. Tomorrow would bring new problems. It always did. But tonight, the Meridian Grand was doing what it was built to do. That was enough.